Thank you for coming to the patio.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Mohamed Osman. Doctor, you are the second doctor to grace this patio, the first at eye care. So,
all right.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you're here. So, I kind of start here with everyone, but let's start with what made you want to come and sit down and have this conversation. Tell me how, in your mind, this came about.
So you and I have had a really good relationship for several years now. Actually going on 5 years, believe it or not. We met back in Arkansas.
We sure did.
Back
I was like, you the dude, you were the model on the thing. I was talking to you, looking at the wall, like, bro, is that you?
That's right.
Yep.
So I think we've always had a really good connection in general, outside of our profession. And we always have our professional conversations that last about 10% of our meets, and then the other 90% is just life,
facts,
liberty, the pursuit of happiness,
facts,
all those things, you know. So when all of this started a few months ago, and you started getting a lot of traction, and then you started making your videos, I always try to support, because I believe in the cause. I believe in having these open, uncomfortable conversations, bringing light to things that oftentimes are just swept under the rug. So I always wanted to support. I had been meaning to reach out to you in general. I know we spoke during COVID a handful of times.
Yeah.
But I wanted to reach out specifically and just, come and shoot the shit.
Yeah.
Catch up.
Yeah.
See where things are, and then see where this conversation can go.
Yep.
See what I can learn from it. Bring my experiences to the situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that.
I love that, man, because this is a conversation I see as being a bit different from the majority, really. Like, the majority of people who sat opposite me have been white. I mean, that's just what it is. I've had, my friend Amber, I think she's been the only person of color, she's black, who sat here, right?
Wow.
And so I love this because I need and I want to hear from more experiences and different backgrounds. So that kind of rolls me into my next question. Give me a little bit about your ethnic background. So where your parents are from, and your ethnicity and how it's defined, and kind of your culture. Just kind of give me a little spiel on that.
So that's actually a hard question to answer.
Okay.
So my parents are Sudanese, which is from Sudan, Northeast Africa.
Okay.
But our heritage traces back to Egypt. So we have a little bit of mixture between Nubian tribes, which are in North Sudan, and then some southern Egyptian tribes as well. So my family is hard to define exactly what they are. It's easier to just say Sudanese, because I think that just makes more sense. I was actually born in Sudan, so I'm a first generation immigrant as well. So I was born.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. That's cool. I was born there and came here when I was about 2 years old. My oldest brother, my middle brother, and then me, and then my parents, and then we all migrated to the Carolinas. The way that happened is actually my dad's doing. But my dad grew up in a village in the north of Sudan, like goats, Sahara Desert, Nile River. That was life. He was one of 16 kids.
From the same parents?
From one dad and two mothers.
Okay.
Yeah. And my mom, I think, is one of 15 kids. One dad, two mothers. That is like normal there back then.
Was that okay? So was it is it polygamy, or is it like you have one wife and then you're done with her?
No, it's polygamy.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So not as much practice now, but back in God knows what those days were, the early 1900s or mid 1900s.
Mid, yeah, I'm about to say we're
not early, mid 1900s. That was normal. You'd marry the first wife, and then at some point you would marry a second wife, and either they lived in the same home or you had two separate homes, and you would visit and live with each.
Wow. Yo, one wife's hard enough, bro. I don't know.
I can imagine. But the children always felt like they were one. So you would never see children from one mother or another mother that would feel or make someone else feel like they're not the same. So my dad went to college in Khartoum, which is the capital, University of Khartoum. He got a degree in agriculture, graduated, and started working for the government. The deal that he struck with the Sudanese government was, if you commit 10 years to this government and this position, we will help fund you and your family to go to the U.S. and continue your education. 10 years. So he was like, okay, sign me up. So his job was to drive in a car. He had a driver. He would drive in a car and go assess all of the agricultural farmlands that were owned by the government and report back. 10 years came up, and he was like, I gave my 10 years. What am I doing for my family? He said, okay. Gave him a full scholarship to North Carolina A&T University, HBCU.
Yeah, really? Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah. So we moved to Greensboro, North Carolina. Set up shop.
Crazy.
Yeah. So came here, set up shop, and he always reminded us, you have an opportunity that most of your family doesn't have. You maximize your opportunity. You don't come here and waste your time. You don't waste your education. You live the American dream in the sense of this is a dream that most people wish they could live.
Yeah. That's crazy. You know, I learned something in Black History Month about the pyramids in Sudan.
Correct.
The Sudanese pyramids, that they're smaller than the ones in Egypt. There's more of them.
Yep.
And they're the only ones that they believe have entombed actual, because some of them are underwater.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were excavating them underwater, and they have a fully entombed king of that time. And those pyramids were black people.
That's right.
They were the only ones that the reign of there was a couple of Sudanese kings that were black who reigned in Egypt.
Yeah.
But that reign was tried to have been removed from history by a white archaeologist who didn't think Africans were smart and all this. Bro, like,
no
it was
way.
So they haven't
Wow.
excavated it because the technology, this is as of like 2 years ago, or maybe even within the last year, they know that future technology is going to be able to preserve it better. So they're kind of backing off the project, preserving it as
Wow.
they can until technology.
That's amazing.
It's crazy, but yeah, they're underwater.
When I went to the museum in Sudan back in like '09, and I was looking at all of the statues, and I noticed they were all black in color.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, what people don't realize is exactly what you were saying, is the empire that was actually ruling it, which I think it was, I don't know if it was the Nubian Empire, it was one of those,
Nubian Empire.
I want to say it was Nubian.
Yes. Yep.
That
right.
empire was black,
Yep.
and they ruled over Egypt and Sudan. Yep. Yeah. So.
Yep. And they're the only two kings or something mentioned by name in the Bible from like that whole era.
No way.
It's crazy, bro. Yes.
No idea.
It's crazy. So, pivoting a little bit. So your Sudanese is your ethnic background.
Right.
And I'm asking you this question because it's going to lead to something I want you to unpack later. Your religious background, I know, is Muslim, right? Is that the predominant religion in Sudan? And has that been something that you were born into and have just known your whole life?
Yes.
As far as being Muslim, by religious identity.
Correct. So it is majority religion. Christianity is a pretty small percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up in the culture, grew up in the religion. There's a lot of overlap between culture and religion because I want to say Islam was brought to North Africa by the Arabians as they were enslaving people and heading to Spain.
Mm-hmm.
So it just becomes a part of your language, a part of your day-to-day practices. And then even when we moved here, my parents were pretty good about preserving the things that they felt was very important to their religion. And my parents are a little bit different than, I would say, the majority of Sudanese, where they put more emphasis on the religious aspect of it than they do the cultural aspect. A lot of people live culturally, and my parents are like, You know, I think the religion is more important because sometimes the overlap shines poorly.
Yeah.
Because the cultural overlap needs to bring down those perspectives.
You know, excuse me, something that you helped me to really appreciate was Ramadan. So even though I've heard of it, I knew you fasted during Ramadan from sun up to sundown, right?
Yeah.
Like I just knew it, but it must have been one day when I was in the office with you, and I remember you being like, "Yeah, man," you kind of broke it down, like not a sip of water. To truly do it, not a sip of water, not a stick of gum, and then like so
no
that
coffee,
no coffee, no nothing, no food, like nothing, like seriously. And if you want to eat, you wake up at like 3 or 4 in the morning, right before the sun, to truly observe it. A lot of people who've sat here have talked about being kind of self-isolated or insulated, right? Mostly white people.
Yeah.
To other culture, other belief, but specifically with the black experience, right? But when I think about that in the lens of between you and I don't have a lot of Muslim friends, right? And I haven't grown up in heavily concentrated Muslim areas. I'm from Mesquite, Texas, so I didn't have a full appreciation for what that took. But like when you say, this is my way of life, and it has been for your entire life, that made a big impact. Let's pivot a little bit to talking about what's brought this conversation together, right? So racial injustice, racism, prejudice. Now it's interesting to me because you're a man of color, so I think you have a twofold experience. Well, I don't know. I don't want to say what you have. I want you to tell me. Do you feel, maybe it's multi-layered, so take your time unpacking it. Do you feel that, one, I want you to kind of walk me down some of the experience you've had with prejudice and racism, but I think maybe there's a duality, and explain, have you felt that you've had those experiences both because you're a person of color and because you're Muslim? Have you had specific experiences where because of your religious identity you've been persecuted or you know, oppressed, or has it been, you know, both in a singular vein, just your color? So kind of speak on all of that. So from the religious standpoint of being Muslim, and then from being a person of color, how has racial injustice and those experiences showed up? So take all the time you need.
From a religious perspective, so when 9/11 happened, I was in...
You were in 10th grade, right?
I was in 8th grade? 9th grade.
I was in 9th.
Yeah.
When did you graduate high school? What year?
05.
Oh, we graduated the same year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a year older because when I first came here, I had to learn English before I could get into school.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. There's always that.
Yeah.
Probably should have been helpful.
So 9/11 happens. You know, it was just another day for me because I didn't really grasp it that first day. We didn't get to watch it at school like a lot of people did. We kind of just went through school and then they sent everyone home. So we get home and, you know, this is 01, so we've been in this country for 13 years at this point. Well established. I remember my dad calling from work and telling my mom not to leave the house. So my mom covers.
What state was this?
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
So you're in the deep south.
Yep.
I remember going back to school. And I remember sitting at lunch. There was this guy, I want to say his name was Fred. He was like a captain of the wrestling team or something, big black guy. Known him for years. And he said to me, your people did this. And I'm like, yeah, I saw something on the news about some Muslim guy that did something. And he's like, we're going to fuck you up. If this is your people and we find out that it is, I'm going to fuck you up.
So, okay, that assumes they never saw you as black.
Oh, no.
Do you think you've ever been perceived as black?
I think some people do, but the majority, from my experience, have not.
What do they consider you?
Most people think I'm Indian, or they think I've gotten South American. I've gotten Middle Eastern by people that are familiar with those characteristics.
Yeah.
But most people can't identify. Most people can't tell.
Yeah.
Because I don't look Sudanese. I don't look Egyptian. I don't look anything. I just look like some guy.
I guess I should have probably led with this. Do you consider yourself a black man?
It's a hard question to answer.
Yeah. I know we kind of pivoted off the 9/11 thing, and I want to get back there, unless that was the extent of that story. But
no, that's, yeah, we're good there.
Okay.
But this is the easiest way I can explain it. Being Sudanese means you incorporate African culture, Middle Eastern culture, Islamic culture. So you're a multitude of things. But in my experience, you're never good enough to be either of them. So, growing up, and when I say black, I'll say black Americans have never accepted me as one of their own. Sub-Saharan Africans don't accept me as their own. And they remind me, you're from Sudan, you're North African, you're not pure blood. Look at my skin and look at your skin. You have a red undertone, which means you have more Middle Eastern underneath, where I have a darker undertone. We are not the same. So Africans, I'm not good enough to be African. I'm not good enough to
You're not African enough to be African.
Correct. Not African enough to be African. I'm not black enough to be black. Not African enough to be African. I'm not Arab enough to be Arab. Because even in Middle Eastern and Arab culture, there's a large racist issue where you speak the same language, you eat the same food, you have the same similar customs for the most part, same religion. But when it comes to a position of where they can be above you in one way or another, they will remind you that you're different because you're brown as a Sudanese person. So then you're not good enough for that either. So I have grown up identifying myself as other, because when I look in the mirror, I just see myself.
Yeah.
I see normal. That's what normal is to me. But every category has excluded me in one way or another, and it wasn't like a one-off situation. It's a pretty prominent situation. You know, I went to elementary school in a majority African American community, and I was called Baby Africa. That's what they called me.
That's what most black kids call you.
That's what little black kids call me. Baby Africa. Because my hair was straight or curly and I just didn't look like them, and they were like, what are you? It's like you're never one culture enough to identify as that.
That's crazy. So that had to been kind of like a mind fuck on just how you identify. Not now. I mean, I think you're comfortable in who you are as a man and as a person, and like you recognize your own humanity.
Right.
But I can only imagine being younger, how that had to have had an effect on like your formulation of your identity, right? Like not knowing what to belong. The only thing I can make it akin to is mixed kids, right? Like I am black. I'm mixed culturally,
right?
You know, Jamaican and American, Black American, but yeah, I don't know that feeling of other, right? And being in between, and you're in between literally 3 different cultures.
It's weird. When I graduated high school, I didn't do so good in high school, by the way.
Really?
I was a terrible high school student. I just didn't care. I cared more about formulating relationships and getting to know people. I wasn't dumb, I just didn't care. And so when I graduated, I want to say I graduated like, this is going to be on camera, I think I graduated 326 out of 350 in my class. That's how low I was. So I couldn't get into any school. I couldn't get into any college except one. And that was the same HBCU that my dad went to.
Is that where you went?
That's where I went for my first year.
Mm-hmm.
And going there, I was like, oh, this will be great. Like, dad's an alumni, I'll be able to feel right at home. And there I was still reminded.
Wow. Yeah.
And they would say something like, are you on like an ethnic scholarship or something? Because obviously you're not black. So it's crazy. But it was an experience, you know. Went there for a year and then transferred out.
Yeah. So speak a little bit about your experiences or anything that comes to mind because of your color.
So color. So growing up in North Carolina, or Durham, North Carolina, high African American population. So playing and growing up, I had a lot of African American friends, black friends, brown friends, white friends. So, you know, I used to go to the park and play basketball, and some of the parks I went to were a little rough, and it's easier to show up at that park when you're this color versus a white person, right? There's just, as children, sometimes that environment is not very welcoming to anyone who may look different. Sometimes I was brown enough to not, you know, raise any eyebrows. So in that sense, it was great. But some of the downsides of it come with, you know, a lot of the challenges that people deal with on a day-to-day basis. Most predominantly, and this story always comes to mind, I was in 11th grade or 12th grade. My dad owned a car dealership. So I used to change cars every like 2 to 3 weeks.
That's where you got your love for cars?
That's where I got my love for cars. And, you know, I had a dealer tag. So I just take the tag and put on whatever car I wanted. And of course, if my dad got something nice, I'd be like, let me take it out. Anyway, so there was this time I was in a Toyota Avalon, which isn't even that nice of a car. Fucking Avalon. So it was me up front, my white friend Jesse in the passenger seat. AJ, which is a black friend, was in the back seat. And I think Keith, who's also his black friend, was in the back seat. So we're driving in traffic, Smallville Road, and we pull up to a stoplight, and there's a cop behind me. And I was like, all right, whatever, I don't care. The light turns green, and we make the left-hand turn, and he turns his lights on. It's broad daylight. Pulls me over, you know, comes up to the window and says, license and registration. And I was pretty confident with police because my dad is very good with police. He holds them accountable, and he has no problem calling supervisors on the spot. And he reminds them, because he worked for, he's also a professor at HBCU, North Carolina Central University in Durham. He also would remind them, it was kind of a little card that he used, he'd go, I work for the state. And that always kind of put them on their back heels from doing any bullshit. So he'd go, I work for the state, I just want you to know right up front. I'm an employee of the state, so whatever is going to happen is going to happen, right? So, pulled over and said, what are you pulling me over for? He said, well, you were speeding. And I said, officer, there's no way I was speeding. We were in traffic. We were almost bumper-to-bumper traffic. So if I was speeding, that means the person in front of me was speeding. And he goes, go ahead and step out the car.
You were what, 18, 19?
17, 18. Okay. Step out the car. We go back to his car. And he says, I'm going to be straight with you. I didn't pull you over because you were speeding.
You said you had a friend in the car too, right?
I had 3 friends in the car.
And they all stayed, he got you.
Correct. The white guy up front, 2 black guys in the back. Got me out. And he said, I'm a DEA officer, drug enforcement, etc. officer. And the reason I really pulled you over is because I suspect weapons or drugs in your vehicle. I said, oh, okay. Well, we don't have any of that. He said, well, you know, I'm pretty suspicious, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the K9 unit. And we're going to wait. The K9 unit's going to come and they're going to sniff your car. If they react, we're going to tear your car apart. We're going to find what you're hiding. I said, okay. She said, the other option, because he gave me an option. So the other option is you can go up there to your buddies and you can find out which one of them has drugs, and you can get the drugs, give them to me, and I'm just going to throw them away right here in the woods. We're going to pretend like this never happened. So I go over to
Were you freaking out at all?
No. I had nothing to worry about. At that time, at 17, first of all, you think you're Superman at 17. I also was always very good with people, and I think I could read people decently well. It was daytime. I knew the situation was not very good, and the optics of it was really bad. But I also knew, I could always call my parents to help. I can always call for a supervisor to oversee the
So it doesn't sound like you ever had that conversation that like when a cop it sounded like maybe y'all had a very different conversation than what I had with my parents, right? Like cop comes, hands on the wheel, all that. It doesn't sound like you were trained.
No, there was never that situation of you need to. I mean, there was, hey, you keep your hands available. Don't do anything crazy. Always ask for permission before you do something. So that was a little bit, but it wasn't ingrained in us as a normal thing because my dad has always been very casual with police, and he's also very friendly. So I don't know that he saw that it was as much of a threat as it actually really was.
Wow. That's
and part of that is just being naive, and part of that is being an immigrant. You don't know that there's this systemic issue of law enforcement because he didn't hear the stories from his dad or their dad. He didn't grow up in segregation. He didn't grow up in any of that stuff to really understand it, right? We're a product of Northeast Africa, but we deal with some of the challenges that African Americans deal with, but not nearly to the same extent or comprehension of it.
Yeah.
So to circle back, went over to my friends and I said to them, hey, so this is what the cop is saying, if you guys have anything. And they're like, no, we don't have anything. I said, are you sure? Because he calls a K9 here, and the car's registered under my dad's company. Like, I really don't want to get into no shit. And they're like, look, we don't have anything on us. All right. So I went back. Listen, man, they don't have anything.
Listen, man.
I'm being straight up,
You're
right?
talking to a cop saying,
Right.
listen, man.
So
8-17? Come on, bro. Come on, dog.
It's weird. It's just being naive of the situation. And you're a kid. You don't know this like guy who was probably in his 30s or 40s, who's been a law enforcement officer for years. You don't really know the things that happen. So he said, all right, well, if you guys don't want to give them to me, we're just going to wait for the K9 unit. Go sit in your car. All right, that's fine. Sat in the car.
Did you call your dad? Did you have a cell phone at that time? Call your dad? Do you remember doing it?
I don't think I called him. I did have a cell phone, but I don't think I called him. I felt like the situation was under control. I don't know why. Probably wasn't under control. So we're sitting there for about half an hour. He comes back, knocks on the window. Come on out. All right. Go back, puts me in the front seat of his car. He sits in the driver's seat.
Nervous yet?
Still not nervous. And he's got my driver's license still. He's got my record up. And he goes, well, I ran your records, and it doesn't look like you have anything. And I remember saying, oh, that speeding ticket in that neighborhood didn't show up? Something like that, because I had a speeding ticket. And he goes, I went ahead and called off the K9 unit. So you guys are free to go. Just be careful with drugs, or something like that. I told my dad about it later, and he was like, you should have called me. Because I would have came down, and I probably would have brought one of their supervisors down with me. That is absolutely not okay. And I've had you get pulled over for driving a decently nice car, and the question of, is this vehicle yours? Well, it's on my registration. My name's on the damn title. You ran the plates already, so you know whose it is. Why are you asking me that? You already know the answer to that. Is that just a question that they use to kind of gauge? Is this person uncomfortable? Are they afraid of something? Are they hiding something? It's like, you know how when they do lie detector tests, they ask you questions that you're supposed to lie to, because they want to know you're human as well, right? They're expecting you to lie about something small, like, oh, you've never really stolen anything, right? And yeah, well, I did steal a candy bar when I was a little kid, so technically I did. But you're going to say no, right? Little things like that. I don't know. I try to be cognizant of the situation that they're in as well. Are they in an uncomfortable situation where they don't know who's in the car? Possibly. So how can I de-escalate the situation the best I possibly can to avoid anything going further than what it needs
Yeah.
So I just automatically do that.
Yeah. But even that psychology is so messed up in itself, bro. Because it's like the part of white privilege that people are starting to wake up and understand is, especially like white women, don't think twice about rolling our windows down, music off, blah blah blah, right?
Mm-hmm.
White guys, the same thing. It's like, hurry up, come on, hurry up and tell me what I did, or give me a ticket, let me get the hell out of here.
Right.
And I, like myself, I'll speak from like literally trembling as soon as I see lights. Like I remember the first time I got pulled over, I barely lost all my shit, bro. Like I couldn't roll the window down. I remember like I was trembling. I think I was a high school student, and I had like her in the car, and I just remember that experience, and I was just a nervous wreck. Call my mom. Like, so my routine's completely different. Even now, if I get pulled over, I'm calling somebody. Like somebody's gonna be on the Bluetooth, right? Just to.
Now, is that fear from safety even as a kid, or is that just natural fear of getting a ticket? Because yes, if I see lights on, you get the little knee quivers.
Yeah.
Right. But I have never felt like my safety was in jeopardy, which is weird.
Yeah.
But I'm more so afraid of getting a ticket. How am I going to pay for it? How much is it going to be?
Yeah.
So even that, there's a little bit of privilege in that, in not having roots here for generations.
Yeah.
You know, because you're the same age as me, grew up in the same country as me, but your perception of it is completely different based on what you've seen in your community and things like that. So
I think, to be honest, it's a little bit of both. I think it started off as being just the ticket, but also, I mean, that talk, like, it's like your parents warning you about, like, a stranger, right? And the first time a stranger, if somebody ever pulled up and tried to offer me candy, like, I think I'd feel the same type of freak out moment, like, whoa, shit, this is what they were talking about, right? And so, and maybe that was a complete benign thing, yeah, you know what I mean? So I think there's just the element that was instilled in you, and then, like, being a people pleaser as I always was, and having an experience at a young age with getting in trouble a lot. Like, I think there's a punitive aspect too. Like, when I got my first yellow card in soccer, I cried on the field.
oh my god,
you know what I mean? Like, that just shows you. I cried, bro. I remember, like, the
I hope it was worth it.
no, it was something stupid. I remember, like, one of my best friends at the time, like, saw it and just started busting out laughing. He's standing where you are.
Oh my god.
And the regular yellow card, he started busting out laughing. I burst into tears. You know what I mean? So I think there has, that's a good question, because I think some of the psychology was just the punitive nature of it, but then that morphed into just a fear and a distrust. Like, the distrust, I think, led to that fear.
Yeah.
And so punitive, and, you know, just not trusting the police, especially a white police officer. Like, I've had some Hispanic police officers. Like, I had a Chinese guy pull me over in St. Louis, and I remember, like, when I see him getting out the car, I feel an immediate relaxation.
Yeah.
You know, now still, okay, I'm wondering what this is about, but, like, I don't have the same feeling when a person of color pulls me over, which is crazy, right?
Well, you probably feel that they would relate to you a little bit better,
Right.
and they would understand a little bit better.
You would think that until he asked me 3 times that, or he expressed how surprised he was I had no priors 3 times.
Yeah.
This Chinese officer.
But
I don't say
they're all
Chinese,
trained-
he's Asian.
They're all trained in the same system.
Yeah.
I have a theory that might work with law enforcement.
What's that? Do tell.
Break it up like medicine. So, train this group of law enforcement to be traffic only, right? So they only handle traffic instances. No guns. They probably can have some sort of weapons if they need to, but no guns. Train them to only handle traffic. Change the entire process of traffic stops, right? So right now, the police officer pulls you over, he gets out, he touches the back of your car because they put their fingerprints on your vehicle in case they get kidnapped. That's the whole process of that, by the way.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they always touch your driver's side tail light first. They put their fingerprints on your vehicle, and then they approach. Sometimes they have flashlights, right? So you're approaching from behind, they're looking to see what's in there, and then they come up to your window and they say whatever they say. So change the process. So make it known that the new process is something like, when the cop pulls you over, the cop can open their door and guard themselves with their vehicle, and every pulled over person has to step out of their vehicle. Every single one. So now you have clear view of what your threat may be. Right? You have the protection of your vehicle, you have distance, and then that person approaches and then you handle whatever you need to handle there. Right? Traffic only. Simple traffic. So then the conversation becomes, well, what if it's someone that's an aggressor? Right? They come out aggressive. Okay, well, they're out aggressive. You still have the protection of your vehicle. You can still get in. I'm pretty sure cop cars are bulletproof. Are they not?
No,
they need to upgrade. But you still have separation,
Uh-huh.
distance, some protection of your vehicle, and then you call backup. Backup comes up pretty quick. So call Team Blue. Team Blue is the one that is trained to deal with the aggressive stops. So they come in, they handle the situation, or you manage the situation until the person gets there. They handle the situation because that's what they're trained to do. Okay, well now the guy drove away when I tried to pull him over and it didn't work out. So, okay, so now I'm still the traffic police. I'm gonna follow them on the radio, explaining my situation, and then the aggressive guy will meet me wherever I'm following them and they will take over the situation because that's what they're trained to do.
If it's by follow, we're talking high-speed chase at this point.
Probably.
Because anyone who pulls off isn't just going to keep rolling.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's probably a high-speed chase at this point. And then the same thing for a domestic violence call. Don't send the guy that doesn't know how to deal with domestic violence. That's a psychological issue. So send a team that may know how to handle that better. That is their specialty, and they may have a secondary specialty of aggression, but
Yeah.
their primary specialty is not
Yeah.
the aggressor, right?
Yeah.
So their initial approach becomes different.
Yeah.
So they approach it from a psychological standpoint, so they're trained, just like a counselor.
Huh.
So
Yeah.
they train them in that.
Or even have a counselor. And that's some of the conversation behind defund the police. People think that the cry for defunding means to take less or take officers off the streets and to take money out of the police academies or whatnot. It's not that, but it's to reallocate those funds to maybe trained psychologists or trained professionals who can de-escalate situations like domestic violence calls. I like that idea. So if we can pivot a little bit, I got a question for you. Two-part question. What did the death, the murder of George Floyd mean to you? How did you experience that? How did it show up to you? And since then, how have you been experiencing this climate? This conversation, this dialogue is what's top of mind, is what's everywhere, what people are probably tired of. So those two things. I'm just curious how that incident, that murder in particular, showed up to you and how you're experiencing the moment in the wake of that.
So when it initially happened, I actually didn't know. The first few days, I was unaware of it. I was busy trying to work on this, work on a bunch of other things, dealing with like pandemic news. It's basically all I was watching.
Yeah.
When I took the time to watch the video,
You watched the video?
I watched the video.
I still haven't. Probably never.
That put it really into perspective. And I didn't watch the whole thing. Kind of fast forwarded through it because I don't think any human can watch that and not cringe or look away or see something wrong with that scenario. And then so you see that and you go, oh, that's a pretty fucked up situation. But then you say it again, right? That's a fucked up situation again. So, believe it or not, I think we're at the point where we're starting to become desensitized to it, and that's an issue. We're desensitized as a society to it, although I feel like it is getting some traction, but I feel like it's just another incident is how it's presented to you.
So I want to push back a little bit on what you said, because I think I disagree in the sense that that we're being desensitized. I think before George Floyd, yes, Ahmaud Arbery was something that happened in February, came to light in May, for the most part on a national stage. And Breonna Taylor, so many we can go on. And I think George Floyd is truly, and I really hope and pray that this is true, a universal eye opener, literally universal. I mean,
Yeah.
protests in like 29 countries and
Yeah.
50 states. Like, I think that because of the pandemic and there's no sports to distract, there's nothing, like, I really feel like this was the moment that stopped the desensitization, however you say it, right? You had to see this. Now, you didn't have to watch the video,
Right.
but
You heard about it.
you had to.
Someone was-
If you had a pulse,
Yeah.
then you have seen or you heard about what happened. And
Yeah.
so I think this one was unavoidable because there was nothing to distract. And I think that, I don't think people that talk about privilege, right, fragility, all of that, they wouldn't have woke up finally. You're right?
But they also
Because-
wouldn't even have the time to think about it.
Exactly.
So, like you said, there's no distractions.
Yep.
So, I do feel like it's starting to lose a little bit of its traction as the country's opening back up and people are getting back to work and things like that. And so, I do think it's important to continue to have these conversations and not just kind of have that initial wave
Yep.
of, support. And I remember there was something that you had posted about everyone that put the black thing on Tuesday, and you had said something about, tomorrow I'm still a black man
Yep.
in living in this situation.
Facts. It's all
Right.
cool today.
Right. It's cool today, and it's okay to do it today because everyone else is doing it. But are you making strides on a personal level to try to better it?
The second part of that question, you mentioned that you've been having some conversations, so with friends. Tell me a little bit about what those are like. Have people kind of been, what have you felt from those? Have people been asking, kind of like, are you okay? Are they checking in with you, or are they asking for education? Like, tell me about those conversations.
They've been all over the place. So, remember earlier when I said Middle Easterners don't identify us as one of them? One of my really good friends, she's actually in journalism, called me and had said, hey, I'm just calling to check in, make sure you're okay with everything that's going on. I know it's hard for you to be Arab, Muslim, and to be black in this country. I just want to make sure you're okay.
And she's Middle Eastern?
She's Middle Eastern.
Okay.
And I've known her for 10 years.
What country?
She's from Palestine.
Okay.
And she's great. She is absolutely, for the record, she is one of my favorite people in this world, by far. So I took 3 days to get back to her. She had left me a voicemail because I didn't know how to respond to that.
Yeah.
Because she identified me as black, but I didn't identify myself as black. But was she identifying me that way because that's how she identified me, or is that what she was told to identify me as, or did I identify myself as that? I felt like I felt uneasy. I was confused. And I didn't know how to take it. I was like, I think it was coming from a place of genuine concern. But I just didn't know how to respond to it. So 3 days later, we got like a 2-hour-long conversation about it. And we talked about it, and she's, supportive of the cause because she sees it every day in journalism. I think she works for NBC.
Oh, wow.
Like a small NBC. I don't know which.
Somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere in North Carolina.
Got you.
So she sees it daily.
Yeah.
And she works through it. So we've had a lot of really positive conversations about how she's changed her perspective, and some of the things that she hates is her family's racism towards African Americans and how they identify as white because they're Middle Eastern. And
Are you serious?
yeah, that's a big thing, by the way. Middle Easterners most times identify as white. So that segued into the conversation of, well, from my experience, Middle Easterners with fair skin identify as white when it's advantageous to be white, identify as Middle Eastern or Arab when it's advantageous to be, and then never want to identify with anything that's, African or black or anything like that. So
that conversation went all sorts of places. But she has been a positive light for the situation and the conversations that I've had. She educates me a lot.
Yeah, that's dope.
She keeps me in check.
That's dope.
I was talking to her before I came here.
That's dope.
I was like, hey, I'm going to hang out with one of my friends. And she was like, all right, don't fuck up.
Oh, come on now, never that. Never that.
One of my other really close friends is also Middle Eastern. And he 100% identifies as one. And
Crazy to me.
when you talk to him about the situation, it's immediate defensiveness, immediate defense on the situation. You know, hey man, this situation, the way that it is, it's really fucked up. I can't believe it happened. I'm trying to understand why it's such a big deal and why now is the time to start making changes and things like that. These conversations that I'm having with him, and his response is, yeah man, it's a fucked up situation. But you know, all this looting and rioting, they're not doing themselves any good. So then you spend 20 minutes talking about the looting and rioting, and the 20 seconds at the beginning to identify that it's an issue, right? And so I cut that conversation and I go, did you just realize that you spent 20 minutes talking about the response to the situation versus the situation itself? Yeah, well, you know, what do you think is on the news? So, you know, why are people stealing things? Do you need a television because of George Floyd? Do you need to steal this and that? And it's like, it's infuriating to have that conversation because you can't have an honest conversation.
Nope.
You don't want to accept the fact that this fucked up issue happens over and over again. You want to belittle it by the response that people give. So my question to him is, how do you expect people to respond? Well, you know, you can do peaceful protests. Okay, what has that done? Well, you know, peaceful protesting in general doesn't do anything. What does stealing televisions do? I said, well, notice that stealing televisions, as you identify it, has given it national recognition. Have you realized the amount of people that are now in hot water and the people that are being held accountable for it? Do you think if it was peaceful protest that those guys, those police officers would have been arrested within that first week? Or do you think it would have been 2 years down the line before it was even addressed? And then they were just put on leave of absence and then they went back at work without anyone knowing. That's the difference. It's starting to hold people accountable.
That's good.
And, you know, his response is, well, what about COVID? It changes. His response changes. Well, you know, when people wanted to get back to work, they were telling us we can't get back to work because of the coronavirus. But, oh no, you guys want to protest, that's fine. No big deal. Go right ahead.
Yeah, you can't even talk to people like that. Like, you can't have and that's the thing about like these sit downs like this patio sessions. It's truly two people coming together to seek a higher level of empathy, right? Like, I can never step into your shoes. No one who sat there can ever step into mine, right?
Absolutely.
I cannot transform myself as a product of 3 different cultures. I mean, your experience is completely different from mine. But I can ask questions, I can educate myself, and then I can use that to make me realize your humanity better, which will then in turn affect how I treat others, right? And that's the point of this. That's the whole entire point. And people who detract from that by throwing in all these red herrings and just wanting to completely take the conversation a different direction, like, I won't even entertain that at this point, right? And I'll tell you, man, last night, I told my wife, we were sitting there watching TV, and she was busting laughing, and I was like super serious, and I was like typing away. And then she like looked at me, she's like, well, I finished what I was posting, and then I told her. So I was at my parents' house a couple weeks back. My mom had in Mesquite.
Okay.
My mom showed me this post from this family. We in the first house that I remember growing up in. We moved not too far, but then in the same neighborhood. So in this house, we had some neighbors I remember across the street who had daughters that were probably, they might be 10 years older than me or so. They used to babysit us. We actually got a dog from them. Like, they had a litter of puppies, and we got one of their dogs. Like,
that was like a family that we were really close to, white family. And the man in that family, the older white guy, retired, he's just been completely spewing racist shit on Facebook.
Wow.
And my mom showed me a post. I was like, Mom, why don't you like say something, right? And because I was like, unfollowing people doesn't really, yeah, that helps your peace. They don't know.
They don't know.
And so last night I saw he put this post, and it was like all caps, like, if you unfollow me because of this, then so be it. I should have screenshot it. Because I need to be reminded this is what people say. And it was like literally 23, 1 through 23, and it was like, some of the ones that just stand out. I think number 3 was what happened to George Floyd was really messed up. Shouldn't have happened, but he was a criminal. But he was a criminal, and that couldn't be overlooked. Number 4 was like, number 2 was Black Lives Matter along with everyone else's. And then it was Donald Trump is president and doing a damn good job. And like, you know, and so I didn't even finish reading that. And I typed away, and I was just like, your daughters helped raise us. They babysat us. Like, our families were family. And I was like, it's so sad to know that you've been racist this entire time. And I said, people like you are the reason that we've had a problem in this country for so long, and attitudes like yours are exactly what's wrong today. And I put a peace symbol and I tagged my mom and dad.
Did you respond?
I don't know. Then I unfollowed them because I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like,